One of the best ways to describe this house, and that's something my dad used to like to say and Ossipoff liked to say from a Sri Lankan architect named Jeffrey Brawa, and that's the perfect structure is an umbrella. It protects you from the sun and the rain, and you shouldn't do anything more than absolutely necessary. And being here, you're protected underneath this big sweeping roof, but very much connected to the outside. And you can open up the whole house on most of the sides, and it's positioned in such a way that the rain doesn't come in, so you can kind of sit under here and be totally out in the open in the jungle, but totally safe and protected. And it's really nice when it rains, you hear it on the roof, and then when the sun comes back out and the roof heats up, it snaps and pops, and you feel very connected to what's going on outside, but still safe at the same time. My name is Sean Liljestrand. We're here at the Liljestrand House on Pu'u'ohia in Honolulu on the island of Oahu in Hawaii. The architect of this home was Vladimir Ossipoff, who was born in Vladivostok, Russia in 1907, but he grew up in Japan and went to architecture school at UC Berkeley before being invited to Oahu by a classmate there. And so he came here and essentially he stayed and spent his entire career in architecture here in Hawaii, and mainly on Oahu. There wasn't a developer, he mainly did private commissions, and then he did a lot of public spaces as well throughout Honolulu. So the general contractor were actually my grandparents. To save as much as they could, they were involved as they could be in the construction process. But the house was built by a lot of Japanese craftsmen because a lot of Japanese people immigrated in that time to Hawaii. They needed temples, and so a lot of temple woodworkers from Japan immigrated as well. So a lot of the woodworking practice here is like temple woodworking. Ossipoff, growing up in Japan, he spoke Japanese. His design tended towards like Japanese sensibilities and philosophies, and he liked working with the Japanese woodworkers. My grandfather grew up in Western China, in Chengdu, and he came back to the United States to go to medical school. After medical school, he met my grandmother, and they married, and in his mind, he was on his way home to China. After medical school, he got offered an internship in New York, but he decided that if he was going to live and work in China with Asian people and tropical diseases, he should take an internship somewhere that he could learn more about that. And this was also on the way home to him. They took a boat here, and he got an internship at Queen's Hospital in Honolulu. And every year they kind of checked in with his parents who were still in China to see what the situation was there. And every year it was kind of wait another year. And in that time they kind of developed a life here, fell in love with it, as a lot of people do, and stayed. After the internship, he actually went to work at the plantation health system. So most of at that time of like central Oahu was sugarcane. They lived in like a plantation house, and he worked in the plantation clinic caring for people who lived and worked on the plantation. Once the plantation system shut down in Hawaii, when sugarcane was no longer like economically viable, a lot of the doctors moved to Honolulu. My grandfather worked with the people out there for 10 years, and he knew that none of them would come to downtown. They would stay over there in Aiea. So he didn't want to abandon them, so he actually leased the clinic and turned it into his clinic, stayed out there and developed it eventually into the hospital, the Leeward Hospital on Oahu, and stayed there his entire career. My grandfather, when they were looking for a piece of land, always wanted to live up in the mountains. It wasn't what a lot of people moving to Hawaii at the time would have wanted. Everyone wanted to be down by the ocean. Growing up in Western China, my grandfather remembered summers up in the mountains outside Chengdu, and it being kind of cooler, like cool breezes, some shade, and he just remembered it really fondly, his summers there, which is why he looked so heavily towards the mountains. They would hike all the time, and how they found this property was actually hiking around this mountain range, and they came down a trail where the driveway is now. My grandparents were looking around for architects, and they were at a party, and someone just casually mentioned, you should meet with Vladimir Ossipoff. So they went and met, and I think they just got along. They saw a lot of similarities. They came in with their ideas and what they wanted, but I believe they also really trusted him It seemed to be a very good client-architect relationship, that they were both able to kind of work together very well. One of the things that I think Ossipoff was really, really good at was understanding a site and placing the house on that site to best take advantage of the climate and the views. He understood that the wind generally came from the mountain and went down towards the ocean. So by placing all the small openings there, you can kind of create a natural air conditioning effect and kind of take in air and have all these large openings on the side that the wind's not blowing in, but it kind of slowly moves the air through the house and exits slowly. So the house can be open and it can be windy, but it's not windy in the house. The rain also comes from that direction most of the time. So even though the house is pretty much completely open on the bottom and you can open everything up, the rain never really comes all the way in. It would be a freak storm, the wind coming from that direction, that would push the rain in this way. So you can still sit in here underneath the umbrella when it's windy and raining, but because of that, the way the house is situated, it functions really well and it's really comfortable in here. And then beyond that, just framing the views, framing Leahi or Diamond Head in like these main windows over here in the living room. And I think he was very, very good at that, but also positioning the house to interact with the environment really well. So the house was completed in 1952, but Ossipoff didn't decide it was completed for another 5 or 6 years after that, because he either selected all the furniture or built a lot of the built-ins. So a lot of the furniture is kind of the popular mid-century modern furniture during the day, Scandinavian. So of the built-in furniture, the bed was also in the master bedroom was designed by Ossipoff, and that's one of the things that my grandfather, in his old age, when he lived here until he passed away, he refused to change the bed or raise it to make it easier for him to get out of bed when he was older. I think he appreciated everything Ossipoff did with this house, and they were such good friends throughout their whole life that he didn't want to change anything out of respect for Ossipoff and everything he did with his house. What's important about the materials is these are the most common building materials in Hawaii at that time. So it's not the materials that made the house what it is, it was the intentional, thoughtful design that really elevated it. To me, one of the most impactful parts of the house is how Ossipoff transitions you into the space. And he hides the views and he hides as much as possible until he wants to reveal kind of where you are. So when you come down the driveway, you're completely surrounded by trees. You don't really know where you are. You just know you're in the thick of it pretty much. And when you get out to the circle near the porte cochere, the house is long and wide and it pretty much covers the whole horizon. And a fence and landscaping extends off to the left as well to hide more of the view. And when you walk inside, after going through the entrance, which is low and dark and winding, which is, I believe, a philosophy with Japanese architecture, is kind of make the entrance dark and mysterious. Once you step in, there's this mass here that blocks your view, and you can see the fireplace, but you still can't see the view. And it's only once you step into this living room and the ceiling rises up and you get this experience of expansion. It's only when you get that experience that you get to see the view. Ossipoff planned that really well to take advantage of the emotional reaction that you get from seeing the view, and now you're associating it with the space. Once my grandfather passed away, the house went to my dad, my uncle, and my 2 aunts, and they kind of all came to a decision that the house was too special to sell. And my dad and my uncle, they deemed it too important to sell and transfer hands. They wanted to do something better with it, or at least make it open to the public, not kind of locked away in private hands and change so much, because they also grew up here. And there's so many things that haven't changed. So I feel it would have been so hard to kind of change it all at once and just change hands. They worked together to create a foundation and then gifted the house. The mission of the foundation is to preserve the Liljestrand House and to make that preservation beneficial to the community. So not just maintaining it up here and letting it sit, but to make sure it's open. And we're constantly trying to come up with more ways that we can reach out to the community and offer the house for free to certain organizations that we align with in our mission, and to promote the works of like architects and good sustainable design. So we run tours and events so we can keep the house maintained and also the house open for programs. We host speakers such as architects, architectural photographers, artists, designers, and we'll do lecture series about the art in the house and architects around Hawaii and Oahu, and we'll host people from other places as well. So trying to kind of make it a little bit of a clubhouse for the design community at large, while keeping the house open for people to come through in tours and get the feeling that we get being here. One of the most important things about preserving a house like this and making that preservation beneficial to the community at large is because you get to open that experience up to a lot of people. Because especially architecture students, they may know like the how you do something and the techniques, all the stuff that I don't know. But I feel like when a lot of people come here and they get to feel those techniques put into place and they get the emotion behind that, I think that's a really important experience to understand the why you design in certain ways and why we do these things. So for me, someone who appreciates good design and appreciates architecture, I've kind of slowly started to learn about it and learn the technical details. But it was always the emotion of why I feel a certain way in the space. And that's just beyond the memories with like my family. And so now coming back, obviously I have a lot of memories here with my father, who passed away a couple of years ago. A lot of the stuff I say now is a continuation of a lot of the things that I've heard him say. He was a good storyteller and kind of had a way to tell things, and you would hear him kind of repeat and refine the way he would deliver a message about the house. And I've definitely caught myself kind of continuing the way he said something. So there's a lot of emotion wrapped up in it for me, both remembering my grandparents and my father here in this house. As a whole, I think this can really, just the feeling of being here can help people experience why good design matters, why working with a site instead of against it can make a house more sustainable and feel better and capture kind of the benefits of the site. It's been a really amazing experience working with the foundation and seeing the house come alive with this design community that we're kind of growing here on Oahu. One of the ways I remember the house is holiday parties, like Christmas parties and coming here for parties. And so it was always a house that people would come together in. And now that my grandparents have passed away, my dad has passed away, a lot of my family members are gone, it's been really beautiful to see this community flourish up here with the foundation and this design community that comes together. And not only does that community provide a lot of the means for us to continue to preserve the house, but they also provide themselves, which makes that preservation worthwhile. Preservation is important. Not only does it honor the designers that worked on the project, the materials that went into making the house, and also the craftsmen that worked on the house. And it's preserving all of their work for future generations to be seen and appreciated.